That night, he almost didn't stop. Rain was flooding the road. His daughter was waiting at home, and the old man looked like trouble. But one decision, one quiet act of kindness, destroyed a powerful man's career by morning. Storms don't just happen in the sky. Sometimes they arrive quietly, in overdue bills, in empty refrigerators, in children who pretend they're not hungry. And sometimes, in the middle of that storm, life sends you a test so small you don't even realize it's a test. This is the story of a single father who thought he was invisible, a powerful man who thought he was untouchable, and an old man soaked in rain who carried the truth no one expected. The rain had been falling since afternoon, not the gentle kind that cleans the air, but the angry, sideways rain that seeps into bones and makes the world feel hostile. Daniel Carter tightened his grip on the steering wheel as his old sedan rattled over the broken road. The heater barely worked. The windshield wipers squeaked in protest with every swipe. His phone buzzed on the passenger seat. Emma, daughter. Dad, are you coming soon? Daniel swallowed. 10 minutes, he whispered, though he knew it was a lie. The factory shift had run late again. Overtime without overtime pay. Complaining meant losing hours. Losing hours meant losing rent. Being a single dad meant math never stopped. Every dollar already belonged to something else. Daniel pulled his jacket tighter as cold air leaked through the door seal. He thought of Emma, alone at home, probably doing homework under the flickering kitchen light, pretending she wasn't scared of storms anymore. She was 9. Kids lie to protect their parents. The road ahead was nearly empty when he saw him, a shape near the bus stop, bent, still. Daniel slowed instinctively. An old man stood there, no umbrella, no coat worth mentioning. Rain soaking him like he didn't matter enough for the weather to spare. Daniel's foot hovered between brake and gas. Don't stop, his mind said. You're late, you're tired, this isn't your problem. Then the old man looked up, and their eyes met. There was no begging in that look, just dignity. Daniel exhaled sharply and pulled over. You all right? Daniel shouted through the cracked window. The old man nodded once. My bus never came. Daniel unlocked the door. Get in. The old man hesitated, like he wasn't used to being invited anywhere. Inside the car, water pooled on the floor mat. The old man smelled of rain and age and something else. Expensive cologne, faint but unmistakable. Daniel noticed, didn't ask. Where to? Daniel said. The old man gave an address. Daniel's jaw tightened. That was across town, a long detour. He glanced at the clock. Emma would worry. Still, he drove. They rode in silence at first, rain hammering the roof. Then the old man spoke. You have a child. It wasn't a question. Daniel nodded. My daughter. She's waiting for you. Daniel looked at him, surprised. Yes. The old man smiled softly. You didn't have to stop. Daniel shrugged. Didn't feel right not to. The old man studied him as if measuring something invisible. Kindness, he said quietly, is expensive for people like you. Daniel laughed bitterly. Everything is expensive for people like me. As they passed the industrial district, the factory lights glowed in the rain. Daniel's shoulders stiffened. That's where I work, he said. The old man followed his gaze. Do they treat you well? Daniel hesitated, then told the truth. No. The old man nodded slowly. Does your boss know your name? Daniel shook his head. Then he doesn't deserve your loyalty. Daniel almost smiled. The car stopped in front of a massive iron gate. Security lights, cameras, power. Daniel blinked. This is the address you gave. The old man opened the door. Before stepping out, he paused. You did a good thing tonight, he said. Daniel shrugged again. Just a ride. The old man looked at him, really looked at him. No, he said gently. It was a choice. Then he closed the door and walked into the storm. The gates opened for him. Daniel drove away, confused, late, soaked, and unaware that his life had just changed direction. Daniel barely slept. The storm had followed him home, rattling the windows long after midnight. Every time thunder rolled, Emma stirred in her room, and Daniel found himself getting up again and again, pulling the blanket higher over her shoulders, brushing damp hair from her forehead. At some point near dawn, the rain softened into a whisper. Daniel sat at the small kitchen table, elbows resting on chipped wood, staring at a cup of coffee gone cold. The old man's face kept returning to him, not the way he looked, but the way he spoke. Calm, certain, like someone used to being listened to. Daniel shook his head. Doesn't matter, he told himself. Just a stranger, just a ride. That's what people said to make kindness small enough to forget. By 6:45 a.m., Daniel was back on the road. The factory loomed ahead like it always did. Gray, massive, unforgiving. Steam rose from vents, blending with the low clouds. Workers streamed through the gates in silence, shoulders hunched, faces tired before the day had even started. Daniel parked in his usual spot, far from the entrance. As he stepped out of the car, something felt off. There was movement near the administrative building. Security guards stood straighter than usual. A black sedan idled near the front, sleek, expensive, wildly out of place among rusted trucks. Daniel frowned. Inside the locker room, whispers buzzed like insects. "You here? No way. Someone big's here." Daniel pulled on his uniform, ignoring the chatter. Rumors came and went. Nothing ever changed, or so he thought. An hour into his shift, just as the machines reached full rhythm, a supervisor appeared on the floor. Daniel Carter. Heads turned. Daniel's stomach dropped. Yes? Office. Now. No explanation. That never meant anything good. Daniel shut down his station and followed, heart thudding. He passed co-workers who avoided his eyes, not out of fear, but out of relief. It wasn't them. The walk to the office felt longer than usual. Inside, the air smelled like polish and authority. And standing near the window was the old man, clean, dry, wearing a tailored coat and a calm expression. For a moment, Daniel thought he was hallucinating. Then the old man turned and smiled. "Good morning, Daniel." Daniel froze. You know my name?" The plant manager, Mr. Reynolds, stood stiff beside the desk, face pale. Another man, corporate legal, Daniel guessed, sat silently, hands folded. The old man nodded toward a chair. "Please, sit." Daniel sat. His pulse roared in his ears. "I owe you an apology," the old man said, "for not introducing myself properly last night." He extended a hand. "My name is Arthur Whitmore." The name hit the room like a dropped plate. Reynolds swallowed. Daniel didn't know the name, but he knew the reaction. Arthur continued, voice steady. "I am the majority owner of this facility." Daniel's breath caught. The factory, the job, everything. Arthur's eyes softened. "And this morning," he added, "I completed a full review of its management." Reynolds shifted, uncomfortably. Arthur turned, not to Daniel, but to Reynolds. "You've been inflating productivity reports," Arthur said calmly, "underpaying overtime, ignoring safety violations." Reynolds stammered. "With all due respect, sir." Arthur raised a hand. "I rode with one of your employees last night." Silence. "He told me things you never did." Arthur turned back to Daniel. "You spoke honestly, not knowing who I was." Then back to Reynolds. "That honesty cost you your job." The words were quiet, final. Security appeared at the door. Reynolds' face collapsed, not in anger, but in disbelief. "I've given this company 20 years, he whispered. Arthur replied softly, "So have men you broke." Reynolds was escorted out. Daniel sat frozen. Arthur faced Daniel again. "You were late last night," he said. Daniel nodded, unsure. "You chose kindness over convenience." Arthur smiled faintly. "That tells me more than any resume." He slid a folder across the desk. "Effective immediately. Your hours are adjusted. Your pay corrected. Your overtime paid retroactively." Daniel stared. "And," Arthur added, "I want you to report directly to the new supervisor." Daniel's voice cracked. "Why me?" Arthur leaned closer. "Because power should listen to the people it affects." He stood. "Our ride isn't over, Daniel." Arthur walked out. The room felt unreal. Daniel sat alone, hands shaking, not from fear, but from the weight of what had just happened. Daniel stepped outside and called Emma. "Dad?" she answered. "I'm coming home early today," he said. There was a pause. Did something bad happen? Daniel looked at the factory, the same place, suddenly different. "No," he said softly. "Something right." Daniel didn't tell anyone what happened. Not the other workers. Not even Emma. At least, not all of it. Some moments feel fragile, like if you speak them too soon, they'll disappear. That evening, after homework and a simple dinner of rice and eggs, Emma sat at the kitchen table, coloring, while Daniel washed dishes. The hum of the refrigerator filled the pauses between them. "Dad?" Emma said suddenly. "Yes, sweetheart? Are you happy today?" The question stopped him. Daniel turned, towel in hand. "I think," he said slowly, "I am." Emma smiled. Not wide, not excited, but relieved. That smile stayed with him long after she went to bed. The next morning, Daniel arrived at work early, not out of fear, out of purpose. A note waited in his locker. "Mr. Whitmore requests your presence. 9:30 a.m. Executive floor." Daniel read it twice. The executive floor was a place workers only spoke about in jokes, polished marble, private offices, decisions made behind glass walls. At 9:29, Daniel stood in front of the elevator, hands clasped, heart steady but alert. The doors opened and lifted him into another world. Arthur Whitmore's office overlooked the city from 3 sides. Light poured in, clean and deliberate. Bookshelves lined the walls, not decorative, but worn, filled with engineering manuals, biographies, and old ledgers. Arthur stood by the window when Daniel entered. "Do you know why I asked you here?" Arthur said without turning. Daniel shook his head. Arthur gestured to a chair. "Sit." Daniel did. Arthur finally faced him. "I grew up poor," Arthur said. The statement felt intentional, placed carefully. "My father worked in a steel mill, 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. He died at 53. Arthur's voice didn't waver. "Not from an accident," he continued. "From exhaustion." Daniel listened. "He taught me something early," Arthur said, "that systems don't fail. People fail them on purpose." Arthur poured 2 cups of tea. "I wasn't out in the storm by accident," he said. Daniel looked up. "I needed to see this place, without introductions, without fear, without performance." Arthur met Daniel's eyes. "I wanted to hear the truth from someone who didn't know who I was." Daniel swallowed. "And you stopped." Arthur smiled faintly. Most didn't. Arthur opened a drawer and pulled out a thick file. "This factory has been bleeding its people for years," he said. "Overtime theft, unsafe quotas, medical reports buried." He slid photos across the desk. Workers with injuries, equipment held together with tape, ignored complaints. "I suspected it," Arthur said. "But suspicion isn't proof." He closed the file. "Your ride confirmed everything." Daniel exhaled slowly. "So, you tested me?" Arthur shook his head. "No, I tested the system." Arthur folded his hands. "I'm replacing management. Completely." Daniel stiffened. "I need someone on the inside. Someone who understands the floor, not just spreadsheets." Daniel's throat tightened. "You want me to spy?" Arthur smiled slightly. "No, I want you to protect." Arthur leaned forward. "You'll act as a bridge. Report concerns directly to me. No filters." Daniel hesitated. "That'll make enemies." Arthur nodded. "It already has." Daniel thought of Emma, of rent, of stability. "What happens when you leave?" Daniel asked. Arthur's gaze sharpened. "I won't." The words carried weight. "I built this company," Arthur said, "and I almost lost it to my own silence." He stood. "Which brings me to the real reason I asked you here." Arthur walked to the window again. "I lost a son," he said quietly. Daniel froze. "He worked in one of my early plants," Arthur continued, "under a manager I trusted." Arthur's voice cracked for the first time. "He died because safety was too expensive that quarter." Silence swallowed the room. "I didn't fire that manager," Arthur whispered. "I promoted him." Daniel understood then. This wasn't charity. This was atonement. Arthur turned back. "You remind me of the man I should have listened to," he said, "and the father I failed to be." Daniel stood slowly. "I don't want power," Daniel said. "I want fairness." Arthur nodded. "Then we want the same thing." They shook hands, not as employer and employee, but as witnesses. That night, Daniel noticed something he hadn't before. A man watching the factory from across the street. Suit, phone, eyes sharp. When Daniel looked again, the man was gone. The next morning, the city awoke under a thick, gray fog, the kind that makes every street corner look suspicious, every shadow seem alive. Daniel had barely slept. His mind kept replaying Arthur's confession from the day before, the lost son, the betrayal of the workers, the hidden rot of the factory. But sleep had been replaced by resolve. Today, he would see the first steps of change unfold. Emma was already at the kitchen table, a stack of homework papers spread before her, a pencil tapping lightly against her cheek. "Dad, did you see the news?" she asked without looking up. "No, Pumpkin. What news?" Daniel replied, grabbing a mug and pouring steaming coffee. Emma held up her tablet. The local paper's headline read, "Southern Fabrics Mill under investigation. Alleged mismanagement exposed." Daniel's stomach tightened. The paper showed pictures of the factory, mostly exterior shots, and cited an anonymous whistleblower. His heart sank for a second before he remembered Arthur's plan. This was exactly what he had prepared for. Daniel arrived at the factory an hour early, just as the morning fog lifted to reveal the tired faces of the workers trudging toward the gates. Today felt different. There was tension in their steps, but also a glimmer of curiosity, as if the employees could sense a shift in the air. He walked past the security gate, nodding quietly to the guards who now recognized him from the previous day. Their demeanor was cautious but respectful, a subtle change from the usual skepticism. The production floor was quiet. Machines stood idle, awaiting their commands, while workers whispered in low tones. Daniel felt the weight of responsibility settle like a backpack full of stones. He found Maria, the line supervisor near the loom assembly. "Morning, Daniel," she said softly. "We heard the news about the audit?" "Yes," Daniel replied. "And now we make sure everyone is safe and every machine runs correctly. But first, honesty. No secrets, no hiding problems." Maria nodded, eyes wide. "We can do that, but some of the old managers, they won't like it." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Then we'll deal with them when the time comes. Right now, our priority is the people, not politics." Unseen by the workers, a black SUV idled across the street. Inside, a man with sharp features and an icy gaze typed rapidly into a secure laptop. Landry, the former manager. He had been in hiding since yesterday's humiliating defeat, but humiliation didn't equal surrender. Landry had a plan. He had always been a strategist, cruel and meticulous. The exposure of his accounts and unauthorized loans was only the beginning. He smirked. "Arthur thinks he can run this company without consequences. Let's see how well his little bridge, the factory floor boy, handles the storm I'm about to bring." Landry's phone buzzed. A message from a shadowy associate. "Documents ready. Only question is timing." Timing. That was the key. Landry had a network Arthur didn't even know existed. A network that thrived on chaos, blackmail, and fear. Back on the floor, Daniel walked slowly, observing each worker. He noticed small things. A missing safety guard on a loom, a frayed cable, a new hire struggling with a machine. Every detail mattered. Every corner of the factory carried decades of neglect and hidden dangers. He approached a young man, Luis, trying to fix a jammed loom. "Need help?" Daniel asked. Luis hesitated, unsure whether to speak, but something in Daniel's calm voice, his genuine concern, made him nod. Together they fixed the machine, and Daniel noticed the subtle shift in Luis's posture. Confidence, trust. That small interaction, he realized, could ripple across the factory floor. This was just the beginning. Leadership wasn't about memos or meetings. It was about being present, being seen, and listening. At 10:30 a.m., Daniel received a call on the secure factory line. The voice on the other end was unfamiliar, yet commanding. "Daniel, I've been observing your efforts. Meet me at the west loading dock, alone." Daniel's heart skipped. The voice had authority, knowledge. Hesitation flickered, but his curiosity overpowered fear. He left the main floor, careful not to draw attention, and walked to the west dock. Mist clung to the edges of the concrete, curling around his boots like whispers. A figure stepped out from behind a stack of pallets. Dressed in a gray suit that had seen better days, the man's posture suggested discipline and restraint. It was an older man, someone Daniel didn't recognize at first glance, but the eyes, cold, calculating, and sharp. "I'm Elias," the man said. "I work with oversight committees, and I've been following Landry's movements for months. You're stepping into dangerous territory, Daniel." "I'm aware," Daniel replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "I don't intend to step aside. Not for him." Elias nodded slowly. "Good. That kind of courage is rare, but courage without strategy is suicide. You must be careful. Landry has allies in unexpected places." Daniel frowned. "Then why tell me this? Why not stay in the shadows?" "Because," Elias said, fixing him with a piercing gaze, "you remind me of someone who believed in fairness. And those kinds of people, like you, can tip the scales. But you will need allies, and eyes everywhere." He handed Daniel a small encrypted device. "Use this only when necessary. Communication must remain secure. If Landry discovers it, he'll come for you and anyone close to you." Daniel took it with trembling hands. A mix of fear and responsibility coursed through him. He pocketed it carefully. "Thank you," he whispered. Elias nodded and disappeared into the fog as silently as he had arrived. At noon, the first incident occurred. A fire broke out near one of the storage silos. It was small, just smoke and sparks, but enough to send the workers into panic. Daniel ran, shouting instructions, guiding employees to safety. His training in first aid and crisis management, mostly from necessity at home and on the floor, kicked in. He found the source, an improperly stored chemical container tipped over by one of Landry's hidden alterations. Daniel grabbed a fire extinguisher, dousing the sparks before they could ignite the surrounding material. Sweat and ash covered his face as he stood, heart pounding. A murmur of respect spread among the workers. For the first time, they saw that their new bridge wasn't just words. He was action. But in the shadowed lot outside, the black SUV reappeared. Landry watched through binoculars, smirking. "You think you can protect them, Daniel? This is only the beginning." Daniel returned to the floor, exhausted but alert. The workers had calmed down, settling back into rhythm. He noticed how their gazes now lingered on him, not with doubt, but with quiet hope. He stopped near the lunch area, where Maria handed out sandwiches. "Everyone," Daniel said, raising his voice, "I know yesterday was frightening. Today is proof that if we stay together, if we communicate, if we look out for one another, we can survive anything. The factory isn't just machines. It's us." A ripple of nods and murmurs spread. For the first time, the factory floor felt like a team, not a machine. And Daniel knew the storm wasn't over. Landry was still out there, observing, waiting, planning. But now, Daniel wasn't alone. The following morning dawned gray and heavy, a mist clinging to the factory like a premonition. Daniel's mind was restless. Sleep had been brief, interrupted by dreams of fire, shadows, and Landry's cold eyes. He didn't know what the day would bring, but he sensed the calm before a storm. Emma's cheerful voice at breakfast tried to cut through the tension. "Dad, I dreamt we had superpowers," she said, waving her tablet. "You could stop all the bad guys." Daniel smiled faintly, ruffling her hair. "Maybe, Pumpkin, but sometimes it takes more than powers. It takes people, teamwork, courage, and smart thinking." Emma's eyes sparkled. "Then you're definitely a superhero, Dad." The words warmed him, a reminder of why he couldn't afford to fail. By 8:30 a.m., Daniel had arrived at the factory, coffee in hand, walking the familiar route across the lot. He noticed subtle changes in the staff, furtive glances, whispers behind hands, a nervous energy in the air. It wasn't fear, not entirely. It was anticipation, a collective sense that something was coming. He approached Maria, who was standing near the loom assembly. "Anything strange this morning?" he asked. Maria shook her head, lips pressed tightly. "Nothing obvious, but a few of the older machines, they've been acting up. Random malfunctions." Daniel frowned. Malfunctions that started after Landry left? Maria hesitated. "Maybe. I don't know, but it's too coincidental." Daniel's jaw clenched. Landry's presence was always felt, even when he wasn't physically there. At 10:15 a.m., the first strike hit. The power in the factory flickered, plunging the floor into darkness for several seconds. Alarms screamed, lights blinked, and the hum of machinery died abruptly. Workers froze, unsure whether it was a technical failure or something more sinister. Daniel's instincts kicked in. "Everyone, stay calm, follow safety protocols." He ran toward the main control room, dodging conveyor belts and scattered tools. The emergency lights bathed the space in a red glow. He reached the control panel, noticing that critical systems had been sabotaged, wires cut, sensors disconnected, software overridden. "This isn't random," Daniel muttered. "Someone knows exactly how to hit us where it hurts." He quickly radioed Maria. "Check all machinery manually. Do not assume anything is safe. I want teams on every floor now." For the first time, Daniel witnessed the full loyalty of the workers. Instead of panicking, they took initiative. Luis and a few others started inspecting machines, shouting out problems as they found them. Maria coordinated teams, while Daniel ran from station to station, guiding, advising, and repairing critical points. A group of young apprentices hesitated near a failing conveyor. Daniel crouched to their level. "Look, it's scary, yes, but if we work together, we can stop it from hurting anyone. Follow me, step by step." The apprentices nodded, taking courage from his presence. Together, they stabilized the conveyor. A cheer erupted when it resumed its rhythm, echoing across the floor. Daniel realized something profound. Landry could attack machines, networks, and systems, but he couldn't break human spirit, not when people chose to protect each other. Just as the crisis seemed manageable, Daniel's secure device buzzed. An encrypted message from Arthur appeared. "Daniel, Landry is moving faster than we anticipated. Check the east storage bay. He's targeting supply lines today. Trust no one alone. Stay with the team." Daniel's pulse quickened. He motioned to Maria. "East storage bay. Now, bring a team. Move quickly." As they ran, he couldn't shake a gnawing suspicion. Landry had eyes everywhere. Even his trusted staff could have been compromised. At the east storage bay, they found evidence of sabotage. Crates cut open, chemicals displaced, a fuse box tampered with. But no one was around. Daniel's sharp eyes caught a shadow flit across the mezzanine above. "Who's there?" he shouted. Silence. Then a figure dropped from the mezzanine with surprising agility. Landry's face glared down at him, smug, unafraid. "Daniel," he said, voice cold and sharp, "you really thought you could protect this place without paying a price?" Daniel squared his shoulders. "You've already lost, Landry. Your time here is over." Landry laughed, a chilling sound. "Over? I'm just getting started. This factory, these people, they don't know what's coming." He lunged toward a control panel, intending to trigger further destruction. Daniel reacted instinctively, grabbing a metal rod and blocking the motion. Sparks flew. The air smelled of ozone and electricity. A struggle ensued. Daniel had never fought anyone like Landry before. Precise, ruthless, trained. But he had determination and instinct, fueled by something Landry would never understand. A purpose greater than himself. With a calculated push, Daniel forced Landry back. Alarm systems blared. Workers surrounded the scene, forming a protective line. Landry's eyes narrowed. "This isn't over, Daniel. You'll regret this." Before Daniel could respond, Landry disappeared into the shadows, leaving behind chaos but no capture. The factory floor was shaken but intact. Injured workers were few, thanks to Daniel's leadership. Machines would need inspection, chemicals secured, and systems rechecked. Maria approached, her face a mix of relief and pride. "You kept everyone safe." Daniel shook his head. "We kept everyone safe. Together. That's the difference. Landry can try to destroy us, but he can't destroy our unity." Luis, the young worker, looked at him with awe. "I didn't believe anyone could stand up to him, but you did." Daniel smiled faintly, exhaustion seeping into his bones. "I just did what needed to be done. Remember this, courage is contagious. When one person stands, others will follow." Outside, in the gray mist, the black SUV idled once more. Landry watched. His plan had failed today, but failure only fueled him further. That evening, Daniel sat with Emma, recounting the day in a way she could understand. "Some people make bad choices, Pumpkin. They try to hurt others for their gain. But if you have courage, honesty, and friends who believe in you, you can stand against them." Emma nodded. "I'll be brave like you, Dad." Daniel hugged her tightly. "You already are, Emma. And tomorrow we prepare for what comes next, because Landry won't stop." In the shadows, a message awaited Daniel on his secure device. "This is only the beginning. Prepare for more. Trust your instincts. Trust the people, Arthur." The night after the first strike passed slowly. Daniel lying awake on the couch in his living room, Emma curled beside him, still half asleep. The storm outside mirrored his thoughts, rolling, unpredictable, dangerous. Despite the calm at home, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that Landry's next move would be personal, closer, sharper, and more devastating. He had managed to protect the factory, but the warning on his secure device echoed in his mind. Trust your instincts. Trust the people. Trust. The word felt heavy. He had believed in his team, in their loyalty. But could even they resist Landry's influence when he came for them directly? By dawn, the factory lot looked deceptively peaceful. Workers arrived in a hesitant rhythm, some still pale from the previous day's chaos. Daniel noticed subtle changes immediately. Slightly altered workstations, misplaced tools, files on desks that shouldn't have been moved. Maria approached, her expression tight. "Daniel, someone's been through the East office overnight. Nothing's missing, but things are rearranged." Daniel's heart sank. Landry had infiltrated further than expected. "We have to assume nothing is safe. Lock down all systems, and no one goes in alone. Double-check everything." Luis, standing near the doorway, looked guilty, or maybe just anxious. "Daniel, I saw someone leaving late last night near the East Wing. I thought it was Arthur." Daniel's eyes narrowed. Arthur. He had trusted him completely, his mentor, his strategist. But could Landry have turned even him? Before he could question Luis further, Daniel's secure device beeped. Another encrypted message. "Daniel, Landry has friends where you least expect. Watch for shadows in your light. Tonight, the next strike will hit closer to home. Prepare." Arthur Daniel exhaled sharply. This was no longer just a factory fight. It was about to become personal. That afternoon, Daniel walked the floor, observing the teams carefully. He found Elena, one of his most trusted line supervisors, standing awkwardly near a stalled machine. Her hands trembled slightly. "Elena, what's wrong?" Daniel asked. She hesitated, then whispered, I saw Michael last night. He wasn't supposed to be in the factory, but he was there. He was near the East Wing, fiddling with the backup systems. I didn't stop him." Daniel's stomach dropped. Michael had been with him for years. A reliable, hard-working man, loyal on the surface. But apparently, Landry had already found a way in. "Why didn't you tell me immediately?" Daniel demanded, voice low but controlled. I was scared, Elena admitted, tears forming. He threatened me. He said if I spoke, he'd make sure I'd lose everything. My job, my family. Daniel's heart ached for her, but there was no time for pity. Betrayal could kill. That evening, just as the workers were leaving, Daniel received an anonymous tip. Emma's school bus had been tampered with. The brakes were cut slightly, enough to cause an accident if no one intervened. Panic surged through him. This wasn't about machines or systems anymore. It was about his daughter. Landry was striking at the heart of Daniel's life. He called Maria immediately. Locked down every access point at the factory. Check the cameras. I'm heading to Emma, now. As he drove through the storm, Daniel's mind raced. Landry knows I'll do anything to protect Emma. He'll try to force me into mistakes. At the school, the bus driver was shaken but unharmed. Someone had noticed the brake issue in time. Daniel held Emma close as she hugged him tightly. "Dad, I'm scared," she whispered. "I know, Pumpkin, but we'll be safe. I promise." Back at the factory, Daniel returned to find a note slipped under his office door. "You can save your daughter or your factory, but not both. Choose wisely." Landry Daniel's blood ran cold. Landry had infiltrated deeply enough to manipulate him directly. He looked around at his loyal staff, aware that the betrayal could strike again from within. He called Maria, Luis, and Elena into the office. "Listen carefully," he said. "Landry is playing chess with us, using fear as a weapon. Someone close to us has been compromised. We must assume nothing is safe and watch each other." Luis spoke up, voice trembling. I don't know if I can." Daniel placed a hand on his shoulder. "You can, because courage isn't the absence of fear. It's what you do with it. And right now, we act together, or we fall alone." That night, Daniel called Arthur for guidance. The encrypted line crackled to life. "Daniel, it's time to turn the tables. Landry thrives on fear and secrecy. We need to expose him, but carefully. Use decoys, misinformation. Make him believe he controls the game while we prepare a trap. And Daniel, protect Emma at all costs." Daniel nodded, determination stealing his resolve. "I will. No one threatens my family or this factory and walks away unscathed," Arthur continued. "Expect the unexpected. Your team may falter. Trust those who prove themselves. And remember, the next strike will be the hardest yet. Prepare for sacrifices." Daniel hung up, staring out at the pouring rain. He knew the next 48 hours would decide everything: the safety of his daughter, the integrity of his team, and the ultimate confrontation with Landry. That night, Daniel stayed awake, monitoring cameras, systems, and messages. He watched his staff closely, Maria coordinating teams with precision, Elena still shaken but determined, Luis anxious but willing. He realized a painful truth. Betrayal wasn't just about a single person. It was the fear Landry planted in every mind, the doubt that could fracture even the strongest bonds. Daniel whispered to himself, "I have to be stronger than this. I have to be smarter. I have to protect them all." Outside, in the shadows, Landry observed. His plan was unfolding exactly as he hoped. Fear, doubt, and loyalty tested. But Daniel's resolve surprised him. "Perhaps this will be more fun than I thought," he mused, a dangerous smile spreading across his face. The storm had finally passed, but its aftermath lingered like an invisible weight over Daniel's life. Puddles of rainwater reflected the dim glow of the streetlights as he drove home from Emma's school, his mind racing through every possible scenario Landry could be planning next. Each red light felt like a test of patience, each shadow along the road a potential threat. He had survived infiltration, betrayal, and threats, but Landry's latest message haunted him more than anything else. "You can save your daughter or your factory, but not both." That sentence replayed in his mind like a sinister mantra. Daniel knew he had to make a choice soon, one that would define not just the next 48 hours, but the very foundation of his life. At home, Emma sat quietly at the kitchen table, coloring a picture of a sunny day, oblivious to the tension pressing down on her father. Daniel's heart ached watching her innocence, knowing Landry was targeting exactly what he loved most. He knelt beside her and whispered, "Emma, we need to be careful. Daddy's work is very important, and sometimes people try to use fear to make us make mistakes. But don't worry, you're safe with me." Emma's small hand held his tightly. "I know, Dad, but I'm scared." "I know, Pumpkin, I know," Daniel repeated, trying to keep his own fear buried. Daniel spent the night planning. He called Maria and Elena to his home office, which now doubled as a command center. Maps, blueprints, and surveillance feeds covered every surface. "We need to anticipate his moves before he anticipates ours," Daniel said. His voice was steady, but his eyes burned with intensity. "Landry thrives on fear. If we let him control our emotions, we lose. So we'll make him believe he has the upper hand while we prepare a trap that will leave him exposed." Elena, still recovering from her earlier betrayal, nodded. "I'll watch the East Wing tonight. If anything moves, I'll alert you immediately." Maria added, "I've coordinated with security. We'll have decoys, and our most trusted staff will be stationed where Landry is likely to strike. He won't expect us to anticipate him so thoroughly." Daniel smiled faintly, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Good. Every move counts. And remember, we protect Emma at all costs. Nothing else matters if she's in danger." Just past midnight, the first real test came. Daniel received a frantic call from a security guard stationed at the loading dock. "Sir, someone's trying to break in. It's heavily armed, and they're moving fast." Daniel grabbed his coat and rushed out, finding Maria and Elena already coordinating defenses with precision. The rain had returned, heavy and blinding, as they confronted the intruders. It wasn't Landry himself, yet, but it was clear. He had sent a team of mercenaries to intimidate Daniel and his staff. Bullets ricocheted off steel beams, and Daniel ducked behind a crate, calling orders as if conducting an orchestra of chaos. Elena, trembling but resolute, blocked a doorway while Maria redirected another group of intruders into a safe trap zone. Daniel realized that every single moment counted. The factory was his chessboard, and every worker a piece in his plan to survive. Amid the chaos, Daniel's device beeped again. He checked it, heart pounding. A video message played, Landry's face illuminated by the dim glow of a single bulb. "You've done well to protect your factory so far," Landry sneered. "But your greatest weakness is the one thing you cannot compromise, your daughter. Make one wrong move, and the consequences will be irreversible." Daniel felt a wave of rage, fear, and determination crash over him all at once. Landry wasn't just attacking his business, he was attacking his very identity as a father. As the night wore on, Daniel realized the mercenaries were a diversion. The real strike would come elsewhere, targeting Emma directly. Maria and Elena insisted he let them handle the factory while he safeguarded his daughter. But Daniel knew he had to be both leader and protector. He called Arthur. "It's happening. I can't protect both at the same time." Arthur's voice was calm but firm. "Then you make the choice that only a father can. But remember, Daniel, sometimes the hardest choice is the one that saves the most lives. Think strategically and never underestimate your own strength." Daniel took a deep breath. He knew what he had to do. Driving through the rain-soaked streets to reach Emma's temporary safe location, Daniel's mind raced. Every decision split into branches of consequences, each path fraught with danger. He arrived just in time to find a suspicious van parked near the school's parking lot. Two men, disguised and armed, were attempting to approach the building. Daniel stayed hidden, observing, then realized they were scouting. Landry's attempt to test his resolve. He called Maria discreetly. "The factory is safe for now. I've spotted the scouts. prepare a counterstrike, but wait for my signal. Every second was agonizing, but Daniel held his ground. He could not let fear dictate his actions. Suddenly, Elena appeared beside him, breathless. "Daniel, I need to tell you something. Michael, he's been working with Landry. He wasn't scared anymore. He wants more than money. He wants revenge for the past. He's the one who told Landry about your daughter." Daniel's jaw tightened. Michael, a trusted friend for years, had sold him out. Betrayal ran deep, cutting sharper than any threat from Landry's mercenaries. "Then we adapt," Daniel said quietly. "We do not fight him directly tonight. We use his arrogance against him." Using his knowledge of the city and the factory, Daniel led the mercenaries into a decoy trap while he secured Emma in a hidden location. He manipulated Landry's network like a chess master, turning every move the villain made against him. Hours passed. Tension crackled in every heartbeat. Daniel watched from the shadows as Landry's men walked into traps, one by one, their confidence crumbling. It was exhausting, terrifying, and exhilarating all at once. By dawn, the first victory had been won. The mercenaries were captured, the factory was safe, and Emma was unharmed. But Daniel knew the battle wasn't over. Landry himself remained a looming threat, waiting for the moment when Daniel's guard might falter. The first light of dawn painted the city in muted golds and grays, but Daniel felt no warmth. Every shadow of the waking world reminded him that Landry was still out there, waiting, calculating, ready to strike when he least expected it. Emma was safe for now, tucked away in a hidden location under the watchful eyes of Elena and Maria. But Daniel knew the safety was temporary. Landry didn't play fair. He never did. It started with a single envelope slipped under the door of Daniel's office. Thick, cream-colored, unmarked, yet impossible to ignore. Inside, a note in Landry's unmistakable handwriting. "Meet me at the abandoned observatory on the outskirts of the city. Come alone. Face me. Decide your fate." Daniel read the note over and over. He knew it was a trap. Every instinct screamed at him not to go, but he also knew that ignoring it could escalate the situation. Landry thrived on fear and hesitation. He packed lightly, taking only essentials. A concealed weapon, his phone with a live feed to Maria and Elena, and a small journal of plans. He left no clues about his route, moving silently through the city streets like a shadow himself. The abandoned observatory loomed at the edge of the city, its silhouette jagged against the rising sun. Broken windows, rusted railings, and peeling paint made it look like it had been deserted for decades. But Daniel knew better. Landry's presence was a storm beneath the calm exterior. As Daniel approached, he noticed subtle signs, footprints in the dirt, the glint of metallic objects half hidden under debris, and faint camera flashes from hidden security devices. Every detail told him one thing. Landry wanted him here. He wanted a confrontation. Inside, the observatory was a labyrinth of shadows and mirrors. Landry's voice echoed from somewhere above. "You came. I admire courage, Daniel. Or is it recklessness?" Daniel's eyes scanned the room. Mirrors reflected multiple versions of Landry, disorienting him, forcing him to question what was real. Landry stepped out from the shadows, impeccably dressed, his presence magnetic and terrifying at once. "You've been clever," Landry said, pacing slowly, "anticipating my moves, protecting what you love. But cleverness only delays the inevitable. Eventually, everyone makes the wrong choice." Daniel remained silent, watching Landry like a hawk, noting every subtle gesture, every twitch. He couldn't afford to be emotional. Landry thrived on that. Landry smiled, almost sympathetically, and began to reveal truths Daniel hadn't expected. "Do you know why I chose you, Daniel? Not just for your factory, not just for your daughter, but because you're like me, resourceful, determined, relentless. You protect those you love, but you also fight too much against the inevitable. And that is what makes this game so interesting. Daniel clenched his fists. Landry wasn't just a villain. He was a mirror, reflecting a darker version of what Daniel could become if fear and anger overtook him. This isn't about money anymore, Landry continued. It's about proving a point. The world has rules, Daniel, but only those who are willing to manipulate them survive. You still play by some illusion of morality. Landry led Daniel through the observatory, each room a psychological trap. One room was filled with screens showing Emma's hiding places, a test of his restraint. Another room had mannequins dressed as Daniel's colleagues, each labeled with potential consequences for the next wrong move. "Do you see?" Landry said softly. "Everything you love is under my control. Make one mistake, and it's gone. And you will learn what it truly means to lose." Daniel felt a cold knot in his stomach, but forced himself to focus. This was not just a test of courage. It was a test of intellect, strategy, and patience. He began counter-analyzing every path, every threat, every subtle hint in Landry's movements. The deeper they went, the more Daniel realized Landry wasn't just testing him physically. He was probing his mind, looking for a weakness he could exploit. Just as tension reached its peak, Daniel noticed a flicker of movement behind one of the mirrors. Elena emerged from the shadows, silent, her eyes sharp. "I've been inside since you left," she whispered. "Maria is ready. We've coordinated everything. You're not alone in this fight." Landry's smile faltered slightly. He hadn't expected a breach in his control. Daniel felt a surge of hope and determination. "You see, Daniel," Landry said, stepping back, "even when you think you have allies, the real challenge is whether you can act alone when it counts. And right now, you are alone." Daniel's gaze never wavered. He understood Landry's game, and for the first time, he realized he had a plan to turn it against him. Daniel feigned hesitation, letting Landry believe he was cornered. Then, with a swift maneuver, he activated a remote signal to trigger alarms and light sequences throughout the observatory. Mirrors shattered, doors locked, and hidden cameras relayed everything back to Maria and the team at the factory. Landry's calculated smile twisted into surprise. Clever, but not enough. The two men circled each other like predators, a dance of intelligence and instinct. Every word, every movement was loaded with psychological tension. Daniel began forcing Landry to make mistakes, predicting his reactions with precision. It was more than a battle of strength. It was a chess game played with lives as stakes. Then Landry revealed the final piece of his plan, a live feed of Emma in what appeared to be a dangerous location, her safety hanging by a thread. "You can end this now," Landry taunted. "Save her, and your precious factory will burn. Save your factory and she, well, you know." Daniel's heart raced, but he refused to panic. He realized the footage was a manipulation, a diversion to provoke fear. Trusting his instincts, he calculated the risk and prepared to strike decisively, knowing that one wrong choice could cost everything. The storm had returned by the time Daniel exited the observatory. Rain pelted the streets, bouncing off the metal and glass of the city, soaking him through, but he hardly noticed. His mind was laser-focused. He had seen Landry's plan unravel slightly inside the observatory, and Daniel knew the next move had to be perfect. One misstep, and everything, the factory, Emma, even his own life, would collapse. The city felt different now. The streets, once familiar, were now corridors of danger, shadows stretching from alleyways like fingers ready to grab him. Streetlights flickered in the heavy downpour, reflecting the chaos of his thoughts. Daniel moved with purpose, navigating through the labyrinth of urban decay and shimmering puddles. Every step was calculated, every glance measured. His phone vibrated. A message from Elena. We've confirmed Landry's next move. Emma is still safe, but he's planning something big, something public. Daniel clenched his teeth. Landry wasn't just after fear anymore. He wanted spectacle. He wanted to humiliate Daniel, to assert dominance over him in front of the world. The message also contained coordinates, an abandoned amusement park on the outskirts of the city. Daniel knew Landry had a taste for the theatrical. He could imagine the twisted irony of choosing a place of laughter and joy for his next trap. Rain-slicked roads blurred the lines between reality and reflection. Daniel drove cautiously, but with unwavering determination, his mind replaying every interaction with Landry so far. He reviewed every psychological tactic Landry had used, the mirrors, the manipulations, the hidden cameras, and began planning countermeasures. When Daniel arrived, the park was a ghost town, rusted rides groaning in the wind. Ferris wheels, once symbols of joy, now loomed like ominous sentinels over the muddy grounds. The scent of decay mingled with the petrichor of rain. Daniel's eyes scanned every shadow. The roller coaster track creaked overhead. The bumper cars sat motionless, except for one, strangely upright, as if prepared for someone to sit inside. He activated the phone's live feed to Elena and Maria, whispering instructions. We have to isolate him. Don't engage until I give the signal. Landry's voice rang out suddenly, amplified by speakers hidden among the rides. Welcome, Daniel. I hope you brought your courage and your wits. From the shadows, figures emerged, masked henchmen, trained and precise. But Daniel had anticipated this. Smoke grenades, strategically placed lights, and remote-controlled doors turned the park into a controlled battlefield. Landry appeared on the platform of the old Ferris wheel, looking down at Daniel, his posture regal, almost theatrical. You've done well to come this far, Landry said, but the question is, are you ready to sacrifice everything to stop me? Daniel's pulse raced, but he forced a calm he didn't feel. It's not sacrifice, it's strategy, he muttered to himself. Landry began taunting Daniel, recounting Emma's moments of vulnerability, showing him doctored footage of potential chaos if Daniel miscalculated. Every taunt was a probe, a test of Daniel's emotional resilience. Daniel countered silently, mapping the environment, calculating every exit, every vantage point, every line of sight. He noticed subtle weaknesses in Landry's positioning, the angles of the Ferris wheel platform, the lighting patterns, and the predictable timing of the henchmen's movements. The real game wasn't brute force. It was manipulation, patience, and reading Landry like a book. Daniel signaled Elena and Maria. Using a combination of preset traps and strategic distractions, he began to isolate Landry's forces. Smoke, flashing lights, and collapsing scaffolding caused confusion among the henchmen. As Landry descended from the Ferris wheel, Daniel confronted him directly. Every move was a calculated blend of offense and defense. The physical battle was intense but precise. Daniel's goal was not to overpower Landry physically, but to force him into a corner where his psychological dominance could no longer hold. Then came the revelation that shocked Daniel. Landry had secretly prepared Emma as a bait. She wasn't in immediate danger, but Landry's manipulations made Daniel believe she was. "Do you see, Daniel?" Landry said, a smirk playing across his face. "Every choice you make is predictable. I've mapped your morality, your instincts. You protect her at all costs, don't you?" Daniel's mind raced. This was the ultimate test. He had to balance risk and instinct, choosing between immediate confrontation and long-term strategy. He realized Landry's overconfidence was his weakness. By provoking Daniel to act emotionally, Landry had exposed predictable patterns. Daniel reversed the narrative, using the amusement park's layout and the chaos he'd orchestrated to gain the upper hand. The park became a cinematic battlefield. Ferris wheels swung, lights flickered, water from broken pipes gushed over the ground, and thunder boomed in perfect synchronization. Daniel used shadows to move undetected, turning Landry's spectacle into a trap for himself. Henchmen were neutralized without fatalities, traps ensnaring them strategically. Daniel moved like a phantom, a combination of brains and skill, never giving Landry the satisfaction of predictability. Just when it seemed Daniel was about to corner Landry, the villain made a move no one expected. He activated a secondary control, a hidden device causing the central Ferris wheel to swing violently, endangering anyone nearby. "One wrong move, Daniel," Landry shouted, "and everything falls. Everything you love, everything you've worked for." Daniel froze for a split second, calculating. One wrong action, one misstep, and the battle and Emma's safety would be lost. The rain fell harder, thunder roared, and the Ferris wheel creaked ominously, setting the stage for a final confrontation that would test every ounce of Daniel's courage, intelligence, and morality. Daniel's breath was steady, his mind sharp. He had no room for mistakes now. He replayed every move Landry had made over the past weeks, the psychological manipulations, the traps, the public humiliations, all calculated to break Daniel's spirit. But now, Daniel had the upper hand in knowledge. He had studied Landry's patterns, anticipated his distractions, and used the chaos of the storm to level the playing field. Elena's voice came through his earpiece. "Daniel, we've secured the perimeter. No one can enter unnoticed. It's your move." Daniel nodded, even though she couldn't see him. He knew he had to neutralize Landry and save Emma without giving in to rage or fear. Landry appeared again, stepping onto a raised platform near the Ferris wheel's control box. His voice boomed across the park, distorted by the rain and speakers. "Daniel, every choice you make, every instinct you follow, I know it. Your morality is your weakness. Your love, your blind spot." Daniel stepped out of the shadows, speaking calmly. "And yet, here I am, still standing, still choosing to protect what matters." Landry's smirk faltered for just a fraction of a second. That was the crack Daniel had been waiting for. Daniel didn't rush. Instead, he used Landry's own theatrics against him. He lured Landry into a series of missteps. The broken bumper cars became barricades, forcing Landry's henchmen into narrow spaces where Daniel could isolate them. Flickering lights and rain reflections disoriented the henchmen, making them question where Daniel had moved. The Ferris wheel itself, a symbol of Landry's control, became the trap. Daniel had secretly loosened certain bolts, ensuring that if Landry misstepped, the wheel would become uncontrollable. With each calculated move, Daniel gained ground, slowly forcing Landry to retreat toward the center of the park, the Ferris wheel's control platform. Finally, Daniel and Landry faced each other. The rain plastered their clothes to their bodies, the wind whipping around them like the chaos of their battle. "You think you can win this?" Landry shouted, rage flashing in his eyes. Daniel's gaze was steady. "Winning isn't about rage or fear. It's about strategy and choices. You forgot that." The physical confrontation began, brutal and precise. Landry's strength was formidable, but Daniel's preparation and calm mind allowed him to anticipate every strike. Each move was more than combat. It was chess in motion. During the fight, Landry's mask of arrogance cracked. Daniel noticed a familiar insignia hidden under his sleeve, a mark from a corporation he had once investigated years ago, revealing Landry's connection to a much larger web of corruption. "You were never just a villain," Daniel realized aloud. "You're a symptom of a system." Landry's eyes widened in shock. He had underestimated Daniel not only physically, but mentally and morally. Daniel realized that to neutralize Landry, he had to risk the Ferris wheel collapsing. Every second mattered. He carefully maneuvered Landry onto a platform above a series of weakened supports, using Landry's momentum against him. A loud crack echoed as bolts gave way. The Ferris wheel tilted dangerously. Landry struggled, panic replacing arrogance, as Daniel held him steady, not to harm him, but to ensure his capture without casualties. Emma, who had been hidden by Elena in a secure location, watched via live feed, her eyes wide with hope and fear. With precise timing, Daniel triggered a series of pre-planned mechanisms. Smoke grenades obscured Landry's vision. A series of lights disoriented him further. Remote-controlled locks ensured he couldn't escape. Finally, Landry was pinned safely, trapped by his own hubris. Daniel didn't hit him. He didn't need to. Landry's defeat was complete. Physically trapped, psychologically exposed, and morally cornered. As the storm began to subside, Daniel stood in the rain, drenched but victorious. Emergency services arrived, alerted by Elena and Maria, to take Landry into custody. Emma ran into Daniel's arms, tears streaming down her face. "You did it," she whispered. "You saved everything." Daniel hugged her tightly, exhausted but relieved. He knew the battle was over, but the lessons of the storm, the traps, the manipulations, the psychological warfare would stay with him forever. The rain had finally stopped, leaving the streets of the city glistening under the soft yellow glow of streetlights. The air smelled of wet asphalt, damp leaves, and the faint metallic tang of the storm that had passed through. Daniel walked through the empty amusement park, the remnants of chaos still scattered around, toppled rides, puddles, and the Ferris wheel's tilting silhouette looming like a silent monument to the night's events. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. Every soaked step echoed the adrenaline, fear, and moral weight of what had just happened. Emma's small hand slipped into his as they walked toward the waiting ambulance crews, her trust and love a grounding force amidst the whirlwind. While Daniel had physically captured Landry, the true battle had only begun. Elena had already begun digging through evidence, emails, and encrypted files collected during Landry's last frantic escape attempt. Sitting in a quiet corner of the police station, Elena's laptop hummed as she decrypted files that Landry had thought secure. Daniel leaned over, his tired eyes scanning the screen. "This is massive," he whispered. The screen showed the depth of Landry's manipulation, not just local corruption, but international schemes, bribed officials, and corporate espionage that spanned continents. Landry wasn't just playing his own game, Elena said, her voice tight with anger. He was the puppet master for an entire network of greed and exploitation. Daniel's jaw tightened. The storm hadn't just tested him. It had exposed a system of corruption that had allowed people like Landry to thrive. Walking home that night, Daniel felt the weight of the events settle on his shoulders. He glanced at Emma, asleep in the passenger seat of his car, and realized that this battle had been about more than survival. It had been about choices, about morality, about what it meant to stand up when the world seemed to favor the ruthless. "I did what I had to," he murmured to himself, "but I also did it for her, for everyone who can't fight alone. That's the only kind of victory that matters." He thought of his old boss, of the company, and how easy it had been for powerful people to exploit fear and authority. Tonight, that cycle had broken, at least for now. The next morning, news of Landry's arrest and the exposure of the conspiracy hit national headlines. Daniel's actions were praised, but he didn't care for accolades. What mattered was the people whose lives had been manipulated, trapped, or threatened by Landry's schemes. At home, Emma hugged him tightly, her small face pressed into his chest. "You're my hero, Daddy," she whispered. Daniel smiled softly, brushing her hair away from her face. "No, Emma. Heroes make mistakes. Heroes choose to do what's right, even when it's hard. The words weighed heavily on him. He knew that courage wasn't about glory. It was about persistence, integrity, and the willingness to protect the innocent. Later that day, Daniel met with Elena, Maria, and a few trusted colleagues who had helped behind the scenes. They sat in his living room, sipping coffee, quietly celebrating the end of a nightmare. "We couldn't have done it without you," Elena said, her voice steady but full of emotion. Daniel shook his head. "We did this together. Every plan, every decision. It wasn't just me. Everyone who believed in doing what's right made this possible." Maria smiled, raising her cup. "To teamwork, courage, and refusing to let fear decide our actions." Daniel clinked his cup against theirs, the warmth of friendship contrasting sharply with the cold storm that had tested them all. As the day progressed, Daniel received an unexpected visit from Detective Harris, the lead investigator on Landry's case. "Daniel," Harris said, sliding a thick folder across the table, "we've traced the conspiracy further than we thought. Landry was just the tip of the iceberg. There are bigger players, people in positions you wouldn't suspect, people with influence over major corporations and governments." Daniel's heart sank. Even though Landry was captured, the fight wasn't over. "So this isn't really the end," he murmured, flipping through documents filled with secret accounts, offshore operations, and hidden alliances. Harris nodded. "It's never truly over, but tonight you stopped the first domino. That's significant." Daniel spent the night reflecting. The storm had forced him to confront fear, moral compromise, and the consequences of inaction. But it had also reinforced a truth he had long known but rarely acted on. True courage wasn't about fighting for oneself. It was about standing for others, even when the odds were insurmountable. He remembered the first ride he gave Landry in the storm, not knowing who the man truly was. A single act of kindness had set off a chain of events that exposed corruption, saved lives, and redefined his own understanding of morality. It was a lesson he would carry for life. Even small acts of courage, rooted in integrity, can create seismic changes. As dawn broke, Daniel looked out the window at the city glistening with post-storm freshness. He knew that some battles were never fully over, but he also knew that he had the strength, strategy, and moral compass to face whatever came next. The final chapter would bring resolution, Landry's full accountability, the exposure of hidden conspirators, and the ultimate reconciliation of Daniel's personal and professional life. For now, he allowed himself a moment of peace, knowing that courage, integrity, and family had carried him this far and would carry him to the end. The city was awakening, bathed in the soft golden hue of early morning sunlight. The storm had passed, leaving streets glistening, air crisp, and a sense of fragile calm. But Daniel knew better than to trust appearances. Calm could hide the fiercest battles. He walked into his office, a quiet determination radiating from him. Today would be the culmination of everything. Landry's network of corruption, the domino effect of his greed, and the reckoning that had been building since that stormy night. Landry sat in the interrogation room, slicked hair damp from nervous sweat, his usual smug arrogance replaced by unease. For the first time in decades, he realized the walls he built with manipulation and fear were crumbling. Detective Harris entered, carrying folders and evidence that would seal Landry's fate. "Landry," Harris said coldly, "we have proof of your crimes across multiple industries, including embezzlement, bribery, and coercion of officials. Everything you thought hidden is now exposed." Landry's face twisted in disbelief. He opened his mouth, then shut it again. No argument could undo the mountain of evidence. Daniel joined the investigation team later that morning. Elena, Maria, and Detective Harris briefed him on what they had uncovered while he was securing evidence and testimonies from Landry's victims. "It's larger than we imagined," Elena said, her fingers flying over her laptop. Landry's network stretches across continents, people in government, corporate giants, even law enforcement. He had an entire system built around fear and bribery. Daniel's jaw tightened. He knew that bringing Landry down was only the first step. The true challenge would be dismantling the empire of deceit he had created. Then we make sure this empire collapses, Daniel said, voice steady but resolute. No one else should suffer because of his greed. Over the next several days, Daniel and the team worked tirelessly. Legal teams prepared indictments, media outlets were briefed carefully, and whistleblowers were given protection. Every move was precise. Any misstep could allow Landry's allies to escape. Daniel felt the weight of responsibility, but he also felt an unusual clarity. Each decision, each strategy, and each confrontation was guided by the principles he had rediscovered during the storm: integrity, courage, and the courage to protect others, even when the path was dangerous. Finally, the day came. Landry was transported to the courtroom amid heavy security, flanked by lawyers who could no longer hide the truth. The media swarmed, capturing every moment of the spectacle. Inside the courtroom, Daniel watched as Landry's empire crumbled piece by piece. Witnesses recounted acts of corruption, bribery, and intimidation. Emails, contracts, and bank transfers, once invisible, were now evidence of his guilt. Landry's face turned red with fury, but it was a powerless rage. Every lie had been stripped away, every ally exposed, and every scheme laid bare. "You thought you could manipulate everyone," Daniel said quietly, almost to himself. But morality always catches up with greed. Outside the courtroom, Daniel held Emma's hand tightly. She looked up at him with admiration and trust. "Daddy," she said softly, "you stopped the bad man. You were brave." Daniel smiled, brushing her hair behind her ear. "Not brave, sweetheart, just honest. Courage isn't about fighting. It's about choosing what's right, even when it's hard." He knew that this journey had changed him. The storm had tested his courage, his morals, and his patience. But it had also given him clarity about what truly mattered: family, integrity, and the willingness to stand for others. Weeks later, the aftermath of Landry's downfall was clear. The corporate network was dismantled, key officials resigned or faced legal action, and justice was finally served. Daniel received a letter from one of Landry's victims, a simple note that read, "Because of your courage, we have hope again. Thank you." It was enough to make Daniel realize that this story wasn't about fame, reward, or recognition. It was about the ripple effect of doing what was right, even when no one was watching. The moral lesson. Daniel sat quietly in his office, reflecting on the journey that had begun with a single act of kindness, giving a ride to an old man in the storm. That small decision had triggered events that tested his courage, morality, and resilience, but also transformed lives. The moral was clear. A single act of integrity and courage, no matter how small it seems, can set off a chain of events that changes lives and challenges injustice. True strength is measured not by power, but by choices guided by morality and compassion. He realized that life wasn't about avoiding storms. It was about learning to face them with integrity, protect those who cannot defend themselves, and inspire others to act courageously. As Daniel looked out at the city, his heart full and his soul lighter, he knew this story was bigger than him. If this story inspired you, subscribe to Momentum Stories. And remember, courage isn't just in grand gestures. It's in everyday choices. Stand up for what's right. Protect the vulnerable, and let your integrity guide you. Share this story to inspire someone today, and always choose kindness over fear. The city was peaceful now, the storm long gone, but the lessons of courage, morality, and integrity would linger forever. Daniel had faced the darkness, and emerged not just victorious, but enlightened.